Okay, so let's start. I'm not going to start with the question of how many of you are front-end developers, because I already know that most of you are working on the back-end. But I want to start with a different question. How many of you know HTML? I guess that if you are a developer in 2016, you are related with the web, one way or another, and you have been playing with HTML. So if you know HTML, this talk is for you, because it's we're going to talk about Polymer.js, which is the library that Google is creating to allow us to extend HTML. So my name is Alejandro Hernandez. I'm also known as Picante Verde. You can call me whatever you want to. I'm pretty sure that if you call me Alejandro, maybe I want to tend. But I prefer Picante. I'm from Argentina, so I'm not a native speaker, so bear with me. If you see that I need something or I miss a word, just worry. A couple of years ago, I wrote this article asking myself if Polymer would be the future of web application development. And it turns out that 2 years later, I have the answer, and the answer is yes. But it's still the future, and at least it's the way that Google sees the future of web development. So let's see a little bit of the history of Polymer. In October 2011, there was a major conference in the Netherlands. It was the Frontiers Conference, where a couple of guys presented the Web Components API, which is this interesting set of tools that allow us to extend HTML inside the browser. 2 years later, in May 2013, Google introduced Polymer.js. And after that, I wrote my article asking about the possibilities of Polymer in the market of web application development. And this is interesting. In last year, in November, we had the Chrome Dev Summit, where there was a really interesting approach from the Google developers to create progressive web apps. Progressive web apps is a new kind of applications that you can create on your browser and behave almost like native, right? So it's quite interesting, and we're going to see a bit of it. And the interesting part is that they are pushing Polymer to be their first and most important framework to create progressive web apps. So what Polymer is? That's enough for me. Yes. Well, Polymer.js is a library designed to create reusable components for modern web using the DOM as framework. It's like creating blocks with Legos, right? So we're not talking about a framework to create applications. We're talking about a library to create components. Then we're going to combine components to create applications. So it's based on the DOM. It's using the DOM as the framework. We can create web components using React, using Angular, or we can create web components using the DOM. Polymer is about it. How many of you remember the DOM? How many of you have worked with the DOM? Okay, so the DOM is this old API that everybody hated when they had to work with it. It is actually an inconvenient API. Here I leave you a link for a video from Douglas Crawford. It's quite interesting. I recommend you to watch it. So this was the part of the question. So we have a couple of dinosaurs in the house. You have been using the DOM, and how many of you are still using the DOM right now? Today, in the kind of applications that you write today? Some of you, okay, perfect.
Same application.
Sorry?
Same application.
Yes. This is an example of a simple method from a node. Who can answer me what this method do?
Wow.
Sorry?
Basically, it creates an element that is equal to the other element.
Perfect, exactly. Yes, it clones the node, right? And what's the difference with this?
It's all equivalent.
Exactly, yes. It's like it goes inside and replicates the entire tree.
So we have a dinosaur.
Yes, we have a dinosaur in the house. Well, the DOM was this inconsistent API because None of the browser implemented exactly as the specifications say. It was pretty mature by then because it was mostly designed by Java architect. I'm not saying that I hate Java, but I will in some moment. It was also broken because it didn't work quite well between all the browsers. So how do you feel when you're working with the DOM? You feel like it's a low-level API, you know? It's something like touching, I don't know, assembly code or something like that for the web. So it was really hard to use, and it was super tied to the browser vendor. So it was not that easy to use. That's when we met this guy, the old gang of all the new APIs or libraries that were on top of the DOM API in order to make you easier to work with it, right? With jQuery, YUI, Dojo. I'm sorry if your favorite library is not listed here, it was just a comprehensive list. But that was the intention. And actually, this is the demonstration that an API created by a Java architect was the DOM, and these libraries were created by JavaScript architects. So they were much more easy to use, or at least for us. So in this last decade, the browser grew, and the DOM was well. Now we are in 2016, and the DOM is of legal age. It's 18 years actually. So he can buy alcohol, and he can drink alcohol and drive, hopefully no both at the same time, but he can do a lot of things. And among all of the things that he can do web components. And web components, it's a new way to extend the HTML to create elements like table, like input, and those elements will be suitable to be created using the document.createElement from the DOM. Also, those components could be configured through attributes as any other HTML tag. We have events, native events, not jQuery or something weird. Sorry. We have also an internal DOM where we have all the DOM isolated from the rest of the page, and it can also respond to method. You see, remember when you, for example, take a reference for an input text and you go focus on that element? Well, you can do that with Polymer element as well. And this is important as well. We have internal and external style. Okay, this is a bit weird, but it's not a strict thing. Sorry. Okay, now I can do it. Thank you. So this is what web components is all about. This is the four important features that web components brings to the browser. Templates. It's a native client-side templating system, so we are now going to be able to have a template system right into the browser. We don't need anything like the standard JavaScript libraries for templating. Can recall the name for anyone? Sorry? Exactly. Handlebars. Yeah, right. I was thinking about handlebars. We have now Shadow DOM. Shadow DOM is going to allow us to have this kind of black box on top of our Polymer components. So from the outside, you're not going to be able to touch anything inside of the DOM of your component. We have the custom element. This is the actual most important part. This allows us to create this new HTML and DOM element component. And we have also HTML import, which allow us to import web component as if were any other resource, as if were a CSS page, CSS file, or an image or something. So let's focus. This is a little blur, but let's focus on custom element right now. So think about it like this. You can use the web component primitives from the browser to create new web components, and Polymer fits there. You can use Polymer library to create web components in an easier way. You can also go ahead and create your custom element using the primitives from the browser. Nobody restricts you that. But it's going to be easier using the Polymer library. This is an old graphic from the Polymer library, but I think it really helps to understand how Polymer works. So think about this native layer here as the part that the browser provides, right? Polymer starts here in the foundation. The foundation makes sure that everywhere where Polymer is running, it will have at least those services. So this means that if the browser is not providing the service, then in the foundation layer we have a polyfill for that. So if the browser doesn't support custom element, or if it doesn't support HTML import, a polyfill will provide that for the foundation layer for Polymer. Then we have the platform, which is in a small layer there, and then the Polymer library itself. On top of that, we have Polymer elements, which are custom elements created with Polymer that will help you in creating your applications. And on top of that, you are going to create your application. So let's talk about a little bit about the browser support, the current browser support. It turns out that, of course, Chrome is supporting all of them, Opera as well, and Firefox is a little bit behind. But this is the most important case. I think that most of us recognize that Safari is the new Internet Explorer, so we are not surprised by this. But yeah, they are a little bit missing all this new era of web component. But there's no problem because we can provide the functionality through polyfills. We have, this is an interesting thing, we have also 3 different libraries to create custom elements. We don't need to create all the custom elements with Polymer. We have also Xstack, which is a library from the Mozilla project to create custom elements. We also have Sonic, which is kind of independent, but they are something related with Internet Explorer, so I'm pretty sure that Microsoft has a hand in there. So make your choice. You can use any of those 3, and of course they are completely, they can work with each other because they are in the baseline, they are just web components. So let's write some code. I really love this. I think that it represents how we write code. So let's see. So remember that I told you that Polymer is a library designed to create reusable components. So we're not going to create an application, we're just going to create components here. The first thing that you need to do, I'm assuming that you already have Node.js installed on your machine. The first thing that you need to do is install Bower, which is kind of dependency, sorry? Yes. Dependency injection over dependencies over for client-side libraries. You have to run npm install -g, which is going to install it globally, and then Bower init is going to start your Bower. And then you only have to install Polymer, and that's it. You are all set to start your Polymer project. I don't know how many of you have seen my course on React, but to start on React, it takes like 2 hours of course with all the things and tools that you need to install and configure. So this is quite simple compared to React. So let's give it a try to see. I have here, start. Okay, so here I have my, let me show you this add-on. It's going to be much easier.
You got the
Yeah, sorry.
a little bit up.
Oh, sure. There.
Also, the size of the font.
Size on the phone?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, and the dark side. Why you're on the dark side?
Yeah. It's always.
Some others on the dark side. Yes, it happens.
We know.
Much better?
Yeah.
You can read that? Perfect.
Okay.
So the only thing I did here was creating a bower.json through that bower init command. It creates this bower.json, and I'm just setting Polymer as a dependency here, and then I'm creating an index.html which looks like this. The only thing that I need to add all the polyfills is this line of JavaScript here. I'm going to show you what's happening on a browser in a minute. So this line here will add a if they are needed, all the polyfills to have web components on all the browsers. So let's take a look at our first element here. This is the HTML import working. So it's by using the link tag. You are used to use it for CSS, but in this case we are using the rel attribute with import and then the HTML in href. So let's take a look at how it looks. It is using also, oh, it's a bit tall too. Wow. But you can see here that I'm using, yeah, it's not that easy. I'm using here HTML import as well to import Polymer into my element. So that means my element will be implemented using Polymer. And then I have this script tag here. I feel like Chinese things. Yeah. And then I'm calling the Polymer function to declare my my component. First, the first attribute that I have to set is with the name of my component. And then ready is part of the life cycle of Polymer components, so it's going to be as soon as it gets ready and it's inserted into the DOM, just execute this function. In this case, I'm just setting the internal text to I am a product element, and it works. Let's see. Well, you can see that there that it's working. But I'm going to refresh, and you can see it works. Now, let me show you that running on Safari. It works on Safari. You see, remember that I told you that Safari doesn't have anything of most of the features that are required for a component. So if I disable this line here, if I comment this line here, now it doesn't work. You see?
Can you please show how the render HTML looks like?
Yes.
In the inspector?
Yes, it doesn't, you can see, sorry, you can see here that even if I comment the polyfill, it still works on Chrome. Let me increase the font in the inspector, and I'm going to comment this line so we can see there in the inspector. We can see our component as if it were any other HTML element there, and if you unfold it, that's the text node inside. It's going to get more interesting with all the other examples. So that's for the very first element. That was not that hard. Now let's take a look at what would happen if we want to insert DOM inside of our component. I have here a DOM element example, which is quite simple. The only thing that it does is almost the same as the other one, but in this case, we're going to check the code here. I'm using now the template. Now I'm using the template part of the web component. So in this case, this tag template, if it's implemented in the browser, it's going to use the native implementation. If not, the polyfill is going to take care of it because it's another web component. So the only thing that this do is render a paragraph element inside of it. As you can see as well, this DOM model element here, it's an internal web component for the Polymer library. So it wraps everything on your internal DOM. It's required to be used like this. So how it looks, you can see there my DOM element and then only my paragraph there. You can see there that it's adding some classes. This is the inside of the Polymer library work. So let's go to another sample here. We have a picture frame. This is a little bit more complicated because right now I'm also enclosing some elements inside. I'm putting some elements inside of my custom element there. You see, I'm just creating a frame, wrapping my image, normal image tag with my new Polymer element. So how this is going to work? This is going to create a div, and there I have this special component called content, which is going to render everything that is enclosed or wrapped by this component. But take a look at this. This is important thing. because right here I'm defining a style tag, and everything inside this style sheet is going to affect only my internal DOM. I'm using a div as a selector. I'm pretty sure you never use this like a div like a selector because it's too generic. You cannot modify the style of all the div on your page. But if you're using web component, you can have that only for your internal DOM.
I've seen worse stuff in a lot of projects.
Can you link there to an external style sheet from the template?
Yes, but we can discuss that.
Okay.
It's not that easy. Not everything that what I'm saying is super easy to do, but it's possible. So don't worry. Let's see how it works. Boom, it renders perfectly. It's awesome. So you can see here the DOM as well. To remove the console.
So,
And we have the
in
div.
this case, it's not using a polyfill for the CSS. It's like actually using the shadow DOM, right?
It's
It's
actually
a
using the shadow DOM.
implementation.
Yes.
You don't have that. We are going to be seeing things like inline styles and that sort of things, right?
Right, exactly. Okay, so now let's get a bit more complicated here. Now we're going to create a component that receives an attribute there using the label attribute, and it's going to render a label and also an input text that allows me to change the content of the label. So let's take a look at how this implemented. First, how it works. Just like this. So I have my hello world label here on top and my input box, and whatever I change here, it's going to be binded to the label. So how this works? It works like this. It's not that simple, but what I have is a div with an ID label for the label and just an input text box there. So here I'm using a custom event from Polymer, which is adding a couple of custom events. And we have for input text, we have this input event, which is going to be triggered every time that the content changes. It's pretty similar to the unchanged method. But basically on my Polymer function, I'm just defining the name of my component and then a property which is going to be called label. These properties are the attributes that the component receives. The type of my attribute, in this case a string, and the observer, this is, as you can see, a shorthand for a setter. So instead, remember ECMAScript 5, you can define setters on the properties. Here you can just set an observer and it's going to call the label change function here. So whenever this changes from the outside, it's going to call this function with the value. And then take a look at this syntax here. It's pretty similar with what we used to use with jQuery, right? This is the dollar sign and then the selector. Well, I don't know why the guys from Polymer decided to do it like this, but it is what it is, so it's what we have to get used to. And from there, you have a property for each of the IDs that you define inside of your internal DOM. So every time the label change, it's going to set the text content of the div to whatever is the value, and also it's going to happen the same thing for the input, right? Finally, when the input triggers or fires the input element, it's going to set the label to, in this case, I'm referring to the label property here, because it's the property of the component itself, and I'm going to set it as the target value, which in this case is going to be the input. So that will be the implementation without the data binding. It would be super boring to repeat this over and over and over. So the guys from Polymer decided to add a data binding syntax to avoid that. So let me show you how that works. And it works like this. You can see it's pretty much the same functionality, but the way that we achieve that, it's super easy using the data binding syntax. It's double curly braces. It looks kind of mustache, or it even looks almost like React, but it's not. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm binding the content, the text content node of the div to the label attribute of my component. And also I'm binding the value of my input to the label attribute. And this double color notation means if this event is triggered, update this value. So I'm doing exactly the same thing than before, but just using the binding syntax from Polymer. It's not that good, I recognize that. But at least it's going to allow you to write less code.
And that event would be the unchanged, right?
Well,
with that
in this
notation, that
case,
would be unchanged.
actually, in this case, yes. Remember that I told you that input event is like this custom event created by Polymer for the input text box.
Mhm.
But you can decide which event you want to put after the double column syntax. So if you want to update your value with another event,
Okay.
you can put it there. If you, a couple of the, let me show you. There are a couple of elements that have a default event to update values, so you don't need that. And if this is the case, I'm going to use a paper input element. This is a custom element created by Google. We're going to see a bit of it in a minute. But just imagine that this is just a custom element created by any other person, and this one behaves like that. They have a default event that will update the value attribute, so I don't have to define the event that with the double column syntax. So that's it. And now let me show you how this looks. See there, I'm just setting the label to an empty string because I just wanted to show you the behavior of this paper input, because it's the material UI language that Google implemented for paper elements. So if I start writing something here, you can see that small animation that happens with the placeholder. It's nice. This is much better for our users. So it's quite interesting thing that the guys from Polymer are offering to us. So basically, yes, that's good. It's interesting that what we have, because they have some like a saying of inside of the Polymer team. They say there is an element for that. Remember that the model from Apple, that there's an app for that. Well, they are using it in the same way, because so many people is creating new web components, and the Polymer team is actually creating new web components that they have this extent catalog. They have these 8 categories. They are named after the periodic table, as you can see. We have the iron elements for main Polymer core elements, some things like Ajax or that kind of stuff. Paper element, this is everything related to material UI language. Google Web Components is our component wrapping Google APIs, like Google Maps, for example. Gold Elements, this is everything related to e-commerce, which is really nice for validation, credit cards, and that stuff. Neon Elements for animation and special effect. This is beautiful. You can do really great things with that. Platinum Element for offline, push, and more. This is related with service workers, which are a spectacular feature for modern browsers. Molecules, these are just their library wrappers, like there are some for underscore and jQuery. And carbon elements, this is new because when Polymer started, they were just providing a couple of components to create your application, and they were leaving you to decide how you want to create it. If you want to use this routed library, just create a component and wrap your routed library. If you want to have, I don't know, offline features, you just wrap your preferred library with a component and do it your own. But they realized that the people, if the people have so many alternatives, they can't decide which one to use. So now they are offering the carbon element as what Polymer or Google inside, or the people inside Google is preferring for creating their own applications. And even if this is not bad and it's good enough, we have also custom elements.io, which is the catalog for all the custom elements created using Polymer, expect Bosonic, and all the basic APIs from the browser. So here you are going to be able, at the time that I took this screenshot, it was more than 2,000 elements there, so you can find a lot. And it will grow with time, for sure. Now, if you want to create and publish your own component, you can go through to that link there. It's a companion guide of what you need to use. You're going to see the Polymer server, which is a custom development server for Polymer elements. It's quite interesting, but it doesn't work as out of the box. You have to configure power correctly. Put this here because in the documentation, in the official documentation, it wasn't. It took me like 3 or 4 hours to realize that. Also, you don't have to start your elements from zero. You can download the CD element, which is like all the boilerplate that you will need for testing and documentation. So you can just download that and start creating your own Polymer elements. Now, now let's see how to create a real app super quickly. We're going to need to install Gulp. Gulp is used, I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with it, but if you're not, this is for running automated tasks on JavaScript world. And this is interesting. In this last talk that Google gave last year, they presented these new web tools for developers. They're the progressive web apps idea, the service workers, and they are providing a web starter kit, which is all the boilerplate that you need to the HTML, the CSS, and JavaScript to create a new progressive web app. This is framework agnostic, and they also have the Polymer starter kit. So you can go ahead and download the Polymer starter kit from their GitHub page, or you can be really clever and install Yeoman. And also install the generator for Polymer, and just with these 2 lines and a couple of minutes of waiting because it do a lot of things, downloads all the Polymer starter kit and then initialize the application with the Gulp server. So we're going to see that. Yes, it is running here. Okay, so this is the Polymer starter kit. It starts with the layout already done for you. You see this is elastic, so it changes depending on the size of the viewport. And we have a menu here, a little router there working. So let me see the code. This to do up. So you would ask, how